From Hollywood, it's Paranormal Tonight. I'm Mark Summers, and now, here's your host, Dan Harary.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to From Hollywood. It's Paranormal Tonight. My name is Dan Harary. We are recording this show here from Beverly Hills, my office in Beverly Hills. Just very quickly, yesterday was a sad day for our SoCal community. We lost one of our dear friends and leaders, Earl Grey Anderson. He was the head of Southern California MUFON chapter. Earl Grey Anderson, lovely guy, very talented musician, singer-songwriter, and longtime experiencer. And he passed away yesterday. He had a terrible illness, passed very quickly. And we in the SoCal, LA area community, ufology community, we mourn his loss. He was a colleague. He and I called each other brother. I loved the guy. He loved me. And Earl Grey Anderson, rest in peace. Today I want to bring in my friend, my guest, Steve Murillo. Steve attended the United States Naval Academy, and afterwards he became a commissioned officer in the Marine Corps. He next attended flight school and served for 7 years as a jet pilot and a maintenance officer for his squadron. After the Marine Corps, he worked for TRW, and he was the power subsystem engineer.
Subsystem, there you go.
Subsystem, I'll get it.
No
Subsystem
problem.
engineer for a satellite program known as the Tracking and Data Relay Satellite System. Actually, Steve, I need to talk to you about my father during this event as well.
Sure.
After having a UAP encounter over his home in Manhattan Beach in 2001, Steve joined MUFON Los Angeles and was shortly thereafter elected to become MUFON's state section director. Now, that's what Earl Grey Anderson was, so it's kind of apropos that I'm interviewing Steve today. Steve held this position for 13 years, conducting field investigations and monthly meetings. I met Steve at one of his meetings. I was telling him earlier in 2007, and Giorgio Tsoukalos, who we all know and love from Ancient Aliens, was the guest speaker. And this is 2 years before Giorgio was famous. And you know, he has the crazy hair, but Steve, I don't think he had the crazy hair then.
No, he did not. Yeah.
It was a couple of years before he did the crazy hair.
Yeah.
In 2013, Steve transitioned MUFON LA into a new group called UPARS, the UFO Paranormal Research Society of Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
UPARS continued to investigate UFOs and paranormal events until COVID came along, March 2020. I was also a member of Steve's group, UPARS. Today, Steve continues to conduct his own research into the UAP phenomenon with an emphasis on how UAP and paranormal encounters have influenced the evolution of human consciousness and mankind's place in the universe. So, Steve Murillo, welcome.
Dan, thank you so much. And thank you for that lovely introduction. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Sure. So let's just jump right in. You know, if
Sure.
you could tell me, I always ask my guests, tell me a little bit about where you're from originally and what your parents did, and what were some of your interests as a child?
Okay. Yeah. And I'll try to go quick. Dad was an engineer, and we ended up here in Southern California. And Mom was a housewife. I grew up in Harbor City, California, in a nice suburban neighborhood that was brand new, and went to high school, a place called Narbonne High in Harbor City, Lomita area, and then got an appointment to the Naval Academy and ended up graduating with a degree in systems engineering, 1982, and a commission in the Marine Corps. I then reported for basic school and then flight school in Pensacola, and then advanced flight training in Kingsville, Texas, and ended up in a squadron and served, I think, 11 years total in the Marine Corps as an aviator. I got to land on carriers, all that stuff, drop bombs. Never had to kill anybody, thank goodness. I got out before the first Gulf War, so I'm kind of an old guy here. Kind of? Yeah, I'm 65 years old. I'm old.
Oh, I'm old. Wait. I'm older than you, Steve. I'm older than you. I'll be 69 in
Now I
June.
feel better.
Oh yeah,
No.
well, I feel worse. I'll be 69 in June. I always thought you were a few years older than me. I always did.
That's
Wow.
because I look it, Dan. That's because I look it.
Wow.
But yeah, and I never thought about ufology or UFOs or anything. I was a very pragmatic guy. Never saw anything when I was a pilot. Never thought about it when I was an engineer. Really, it didn't happen. It didn't happen until 2001 when I was sitting in my hot tub. I've told the story a million times, but I was sitting in my hot tub at night, looking out towards the ocean in Manhattan Beach, right in Manhattan Beach, center of Los Angeles. And I see these objects fly over my head silently. Each one was shaped like a ninja throwing star, three-pronged ninja throwing star. They were in
Wow.
formation.
How many?
Each
How
there
many
were
would you say?
there were five. There were so one in the lead and then two in echelon on each side, right? So like kind of like a triangular formation, if you will. And they flew directly from west to east over silently over my head, probably not even 1,000 feet high of altitude. And being an ex-military pilot, I looked at these things and knew immediately they were not anything I'd ever seen in any inventory, ours or anybody else's. Flew over my head. I followed them due east. And as they were departing east, again, this is about 9:30 at night, three of them separated and slid across the sky in a very, very short amount of time, maybe less than a second, and got maybe a mile or two separation. The ones that were left behind continued in that direction, and then all of a sudden, instantaneously joined up, just again, slid across the sky, joined up with the others, and took off at about a north by northwest or northeast direction. And, I knew I'd seen something that I had never seen before. And I mean, everything, that curtain, it's like, I felt like somebody pried my head open and, just gave me a download. So I jumped out of the hot tub and ran downstairs screaming to my wife and, got on Netscape and searched for, I called Tower.
Netscape.
Yeah. It was Netscape back then.
Right.
I called Tower, LA Tower. I called LA Approach to see if they had anything strange or anomalous on radar. And they said no. And so then I got on, searching for what the heck could I see? It was kind of like one of these eureka moments, right? And what came up was MUFON LA. They had a presence on the internet where you could file a report. I was like, oh, I just wanted to tell somebody. So I filed this report, little one-page thing.
Had you, wait, well, hold on one second. Were you familiar with MUFON at that point?
No.
Okay.
I just found him when I did this search.
So 01 is really, this began
my intro. Yeah.
This phase of your life. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right.
And so I was at that time, 41 years old. So filed a report, got a call from Bill Casey, who was their director of investigations at the time. He called me maybe 2 or 3 days later, and I told him all about it, and he listened quietly. And then finally at the end of it, he said, well, you had a really good sighting there. And, I'd like to invite you to our next meeting. And I said, I'm there, and I started reading every book I could get my hands on. I started going to their meetings once a month. And the next thing you know, I'm on the board. And the next thing you know, Don Waldrop, who was the head of MUFON LA at the time, moved down to Florida and asked me if I would take his place. And I was honored to do so. So I became the state section director for MUFON Los Angeles at that time. And that was maybe in 2002 or probably about 2000. Only about a year before I was the new guy. And we just continued with the meetings every month. And I've had just about anybody, every speaker you can think of, except for the new ones. Like I was looking at Contact in the Desert's roster.
Right.
Richard Dolan, Linda Moulton Howe, Jimmy Church, all these people have been to
your meetings,
to UPARS, MUFON LA or UPARS. But then some who are no longer with us. Bud Hopkins, who did tremendous work in the field of abduction. Wow. Roger Leir, who was a podiatrist who worked in the Valley. Right. He was actually the head of MUFON Ventura at that time. Wow, and he came and gave talks. He gave talks about implants and the removal thereof. And he filmed his removals. And if no one's ever seen a documentary or a film on removing an implant, these things will move. They will move away from the knife. Not always, but when you get right down to it, get into the flesh, sometimes these things will move as if they have tendrils or a mind of their own. Um, that said, not every abductee who has an implant wants to get rid of them. And in fact, some people protect them. You know, they'll make up excuses not to get rid of them. They'll sort of protect them. Subconsciously, I think they're being controlled by it. Whitley Strieber, who's going to be a contact, he still has his. Yvonne Smith, not Yvonne Smith, Camille Harmon, I believe she still does. I don't know that for a fact. Camille has a really interesting, she spoke yesterday for you, right?
Right.
At your meeting, and she has some really interesting stories. How it's really interesting when you tie ufology, or when you see the link between ufology and religion, because there's a link there.
Right, for sure.
There was a woman who was part of our board. Her name was Ann Druffel. She's no longer with us. She was a beautiful woman. She wrote several books on ufology, but she believed that the phenomenon was satanic or demonic. I shouldn't say satanic, it was demonic. And she believed that invoking Jesus Christ, the name of Jesus Christ during an episode, if you want to stop an abduction scenario, you could stop it by invoking his name and asking for help. And people would try that and oftentimes reported success.
Almost like an exorcism.
Yeah. Now, why that is, there are various theories about it, but anyway, that was a thing. So Camille, going back to Camille, she actually left the field of ufology and got into the Catholic, went very deep into the Catholic Church.
Right, that's right.
And now somehow she's been able to meld the two, and kind of
Well,
like
she pretty much came back into the ufology side more recently.
but she hasn't left Catholicism, I don't think.
No. She's
she's
learned. She's sort of embraced both
right.
paths.
She's found a way to make it work. We were talking earlier about how abductees often have trouble operating electronics,
right?
And that's true of Camille. That's true of some people that a woman that used to work for me here in the field of real estate. I mean, but I've noticed that phenomenon over time. Certain abductees, not even certain, most abductees have problems with computers. They glitch out. They shut down. They can't get them to work right. Billy Carson, that's the other guy I was thinking of.
I've heard of him. Yeah,
Billy Carson, really interesting. He had an abduction experience in Florida. He is from Florida, and I was telling you how at one contact in the day, he's a great presenter, has great information, great material, but so I was in the front row waiting for this guy to present. He could not get his laptop to work. It was almost as if it was being hacked in live time while he's trying to get this thing to go. So that's a thing. But there are so many strange elements to the phenomenon. And when I say phenomenon, I use that in a very, very broad sense, because there's no one way to characterize what it is. If you try to encapsulate it in just, it's mechanical, like for example,
hardware,
it's nuts and bolts. It's hardware. It's nuts and bolts. You're missing probably 99.9% of the phenomenon. It's all, ethereal, rainbows and unicorns. Well, no, you're ignoring the very dark side of it, which is
I use that exact expression. I say I'm good friends with Stephen Bassett. He's one of my best friends, and he's been fighting for disclosure for 30 years. And my joke to Stephen, I'm like, Stephen, when disclosure happens, you think it's all going to be unicorns and rainbows. I always say that to him. But I'm also friends with Nick Pope, and Nick Pope says many of these races are demonic and evil, and to be careful. For those of us who want disclosure, be careful what you wish for. So both can be true at the same time.
Yeah. It's like this. Besides the evolution of understanding, right? Understanding what they are physically. Okay. There's that important step we have to take as mankind, as people. You have to understand sort of physically what's going on there, but then you have to understand that there's also an intellect around it, and there's also you have to allow for the possibility that there are extra dimensional ways to understand the phenomenon. The phenomenon itself can move interdimensionally. So unless you have the ability to move interdimensionally with your mind or with your consciousness, then you're going to miss that aspect of it. So if you the question I'd ask you is, would you walk into a boxing ring, let's say, Muhammad Ali's in his prime, They put gloves on you you've never boxed before. You're out of shape. Muhammad Ali's your opponent, and they're going to blindfold you before you go in. They blindfold you. They point you in the direction, say good luck.
Right.
That's kind of like what you're up against as you delve into this, right? As you go into this if you don't have that understanding, it can be dangerous. It can be dangerous. So you have to approach it responsibly and like little by little by little. You know what I mean? Or you find yourself in places you don't want to be. You know,
Yeah.
and I think that's
I've
what
been
happens.
studying this really for almost 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
I had a profound experience with my father when I was 13 in 1970. I don't know if you know this.
No.
My father, I grew up in suburban New Jersey, and my father was driving me home from school one day, and a huge silver V, daytime, huge silver
Yeah.
V was hovering over my father's car. It was out of nowhere, just was traveling
Wow.
with us. So I'm 13, my dad's driving, and I go, Dad, there's a UFO, stop the car. Dad, there's a UFO. Stop the car, stop the car. He stopped the car. We got out. We stood in front of the car. We're looking up. I'm gonna say 300 feet. I mean, it was right there, right?
Yeah.
Huge silver V hanging above my father's car. Shiny silver, pointy tips, no sound, no propellers, no smoke,
Sure.
silent. And I'm literally, Steve, I'm like, Dad, look, it's Star Trek. Dad, look, this is 1970. It's Star
Yeah.
Trek. And Steve, my father looked at it like, da, 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 da. He's looking at his watch, looking at his car, bored. He's looking at his, bored, like bored, couldn't care less.
Why? How could it be?
I'll tell you, that's the whole key to this whole story. So I remember clearly, I'm like, why is my dad so bored by this incredible thing? So
Right.
after maybe 2, 3 minutes, he goes, come on, kid, let's go home. Go home, get in the car, go into our house. Rotary phone, 1970, rotary phone.
Sure.
I call the Asbury Park Press, my hometown newspaper. Hi, my name is Danny. I'm 13. I just saw a UFO with my father. The lady said, Sonny, I can't talk to you now. I'm getting hundreds of phone calls about this. Can't talk right now. Get hundreds of phone calls about this. So
Wow.
I didn't make it up, you know.
Yeah.
Hung up. I checked the paper every day, Steve, for the next week. No article ever ran.
Yeah.
And now, we jump to. I forgot that happened for 47 years. I forgot that event
You blanked
happened
it out. Yeah.
for 47 years. My dad and I never discussed it ever. I never told anyone even about it.
Yeah.
Why? I just got my drum set for my bar mitzvah. I'm in rock bands, chasing pretty girls. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm playing Led Zeppelin, and
Sure.
I'm not thinking aliens and UFOs in
Yeah.
1970.
No.
Okay, 47 years later, my father died. April 2017, exactly 7 years ago now.
Oh,
My
wow.
father died in Florida with his second wife. I get the call. Okay. 3 days later, I'm here in LA. I go to Junior's Deli near UCLA to get a pastrami sandwich and to think about my father. And that's all I did. I went to get a sandwich to think about my father. So this is my entry, Steve. I sat in at the deli, ordered my sandwich. The waiter walks away. A beam of light, a beam of energy from the ceiling hits me in the head like someone had hit my head with knuckles, like this. Bang. And through my eyes and my brain, projected in the air in front of me, 8 inches in front of my face, was the 1970 UFO sighting as a 3D color hologram home movie with audio. How's that for a story?
You got to be kidding me.
I swear on my daughter, this is a true story. It played. It played, Steve. It played. Now, this is 3 days after my father died. Okay? So it played. So in the video, in this hologram, the father's car, the V, my dad and me, and I'm jumping up and down. And Steve, I go, holy S, I remember that, right? I
It was a
remember that.
third person perspective of the whole thing, not from.
Right, exactly. It was my joke is as though God was the cameraman with like one
Yeah.
of these, like
Yeah.
behind my father's car, like Cecil B. DeMille. It was recorded. It had been recorded. I'm in the video. It's not from my POV. I was in the video. So I watched this. So my heart's racing, my hands are shaking, and I'm watching it now. Steve, this time in the video, my father looked at me, he winked at me, and then he said, "Come on, kid, let's go home." He winked at me, right? Okay, that dissipates. That it played for, I'm going to say it played for 20 seconds. Now I'm shaking like this. Then I
Yeah.
hear, I'm clairaudient. I hear, get a pen, get a pen, get a pen, get a pen. You need a pen, you need a pen. I asked the waiter for a pen, put it in my hand. On the table in front of me was a paper placemat, and my hand did automatic writing, Steve. And my hand wrote, write a book about benevolent aliens. Lead character's father knew about UFOs. And then I wrote capital A, capital T, capital C, and then my hand stopped moving. Okay? Now my hand wrote those things. I didn't. I'm holding the paper. I'm like, what the hell is happening? And after about 5 minutes, I realized I had just given a mandate from above to write my book after they came, ATC.
Wow.
This was given to me. This was a digital download. My book was given to me. Now, some people think it was aliens, but I think it was my father from heaven. Now, who was my father? My father invented drones for the Army. And no one knew that while he was alive. Even my mother didn't know that, Steve. So I've researched my father, and I'm convinced he was part of the reverse engineering program of UFOs at Fort Monmouth Army Base in New Jersey. And a few years ago, Stephen Greer presented a chart. He was at the Washington Press Club, Stephen Greer. He did a chart of 150 U.S. military bases that he has proof of through whistleblowers who reverse engineered UFOs. And number 51 on this chart was Fort Monmouth, New Jersey, where my father worked his whole life.
Holy smokes.
So when I saw that, I had the chills. And I've given lectures. I've given maybe half a dozen lectures, and they're called Why I Believe My Father Reverse Engineered UFOs for the Army. So go back to the 1970s. We see this remarkable eighth wonder of the world. My father looked at it, Steve. He was bored. Bored. Why? He'd seen it before. He knew what it was.
Yeah.
And also after he died, my mother said, my father used to go to White Sands Missile Testing Range all the time for decades because my father designed things that flew in the sky. So he would go there. And my mother also told, and then I'll get back to you. She told me a great story after he died. I said, Mom, did Dad ever talk about UFOs with you ever? And she said, in the early 50s, one day my father came home from Fort Monmouth and he was all pale and shaking and nervous and very upset. And my mother goes, honey, what's wrong? And my father said, I saw something today in the vaults, deep in the vaults at the base, above top secret. I could never tell you as long as I live. I could never tell anyone as long as I live. My mother said he was never the same after that day.
Wow.
So, Steve, what could it have been? A craft? An alien living
Or
or
even a
dead?
body. Even a body.
An alien living or dead, a craft, or a
Yeah.
chunk of alien technology. Had to be something. Because my father
Yeah.
was a genius physicist. So he saw something remarkable.
What was his educational background, your dad?
He had a master's in science and physics from Rutgers University.
From Rutgers.
And he was like a GS 14 or a GS 15 when he retired. I mean,
Yeah.
he gave talks at the Pentagon. When I was little, he once told me he wrote a paper that President Kennedy had read. So my dad was like,
Wow.
isn't
Holy smokes.
Isn't that something?
Yeah. Well,
Something.
and what's even not even more interesting, but what's interesting is that his son kind of adapted the legacy, that information, or you're part of it,
Well, it was given to me as a gift. It was given to me as a gift. Yeah.
not everybody's clairaudient. Not everybody has the ability to decipher some download that's, out of the ether. Somehow your consciousness was opened up, and it might have been that drone thing, that V that was above your heads that day, or you might have been born with it.
Okay, we're going to take a little break right now. We need to hear from a very handsome fellow who's going to be talking about his book called After They Came, and we'll be right back. Hi, I'm Dan Harary, author of the sci-fi novel After They Came. After They Came tells the story of Jonathan Tuckerman, a Los Angeles man down on his luck and truly alone in life, who decides to mark his 70th birthday by drowning himself in the Pacific Ocean. Instead,
he inadvertently becomes the world's Wonder Man after a pair of extraterrestrial visitors from the Pleiades appear in a giant spacecraft, pluck him from the sea, and present him to the media and the world as their ambassador to mankind. Many leading UFO researchers have embraced After They Came. Nick Pope has called the novel, quote, a delightful tale of wonder and hope. Richard Dolan adds, quote, this book is a captivating novel of benevolent alien contact. And famous alien abductee Travis Walton has said, quote, After They Came is presented in such a graphic visual style, it could serve as the basis for an entertaining film adaptation. After They Came is now available on paperback right here at Genius Book Publishing.
And we're back. By the way, my book After They Came is now also available as an audiobook. It just was released as an audiobook. After They Came, print, ebook, audiobook, all available on Amazon.com. Thank you.
Do you remember any experiences when you were much younger?
I've had paranormal experiences from the age of 5.
Yeah.
But not ET or UFO related.
Yeah.
Although, this is my other book, by the way. This came out last year, My Paranormal Life. When I was 5, I fell off a billboard sign. I was climbing about 25, 30 feet high. I fell. And as I was falling, I fell backwards, and I fell in slow motion because I remember falling. I fell in slow motion. And then I have missing time. And then I woke up, I don't know how much longer, 2 blocks away on a couch in a stranger's house. No one was home. No one was home.
Man.
Hold on, it gets better.
Are you kidding?
No one was home. I'm 5 years old. 2 blocks away, stranger's couch. No one is home. I look over. I sat up. I go, hello. I get up to leave, Steve. There's a cryptid at the front door, a 6-7 foot tall cryptid. He had like the face of a bull. He had like this bull kind of, he was standing upright. He had like bony stubs where wings would have once been. And he looked at me and he snorted at me. Yeah, I saved your life, you little bastard, but I didn't want to. And then he
didn't eat you.
And then he disappeared. And then I walked home. This cryptid saved my life because I fell from a sign.
Holy
missing time.
smokes.
And then this cryptid saved my life. So that might have been an ET. I might have been taken. I don't know.
Well, so I got into the business, I'll call it, in 2001, and I've interviewed many people, many abductees, and you have all the classic, I'll call them symptoms, you have all these things. So, whether you remember or not, you're a contactee at least, you know what I mean?
I believe that's true.
Yeah,
yes.
Not necessarily an abductee, but at least a contactee. That's amazing. That's pretty amazing. But I didn't know that about you until now.
I know.
Isn't that crazy?
Well, the truth is, here's what's funny. I wanted to do, after my book came out, I wanted to do a speak at one of your events, but then it was too late,
We stopped doing them.
But that's why I created. But then I created the Hollywood Disclosure Line so I could talk about my stuff. I mean,
I'm so glad you did too.
Yeah.
I was lucky enough to go to your meeting in September where Thomas Jane gave his presentation.
Yeah.
And that presentation was over the top. Because it's really it's thinking forward. It's kind of a thinking forward presentation. In the old days, you go all these conventions, it's nuts and bolts and this and that, reporting, the pyramids on Mars or whatever it is. It's very physical.
Right.
But Jane's presentation is sort of like looking forward towards the evolution of human consciousness as in the context of ufology or this phenomenon. So I was very appreciative of that meeting and the fact that you had him up there. He's a good guy too. I like Thomas. He used to come to some of the meetings here and there. His trademark is he's always barefoot.
That's exactly right.
He's always barefoot. Which I can understand. You're connected to the earth. There's a lot to that.
Well, I can tell you because I know him very, very well. I've known him for the last 2 years. Last year at Contact in the Desert, I go, Thomas, I got to ask you, man, how come you never wear shoes? And he looked at me, dead serious, and he goes, I hate shoes. Now, have you ever heard that sentence before in your life? I hate shoes. Like who says I hate? Like I hate coconut, right? I hate black licorice. I hate shoes.
Yeah, that's kind of
that's Thomas Jane. I hate shoes.
Yeah.
Like, did he have a bad experience as a child?
Must have
with a shoe. Like, did his father beat him with a shoe? Great.
Must have, you know.
All right,
Interesting.
let's get back to your UAP
Sure.
event, because that was life altering for you. That was a daytime event, right?
No, it was a nighttime event. It was about
Ah.
9:30 at night. The reason I remember that is, I practiced karate. Kyokushin karate was my thing. And back then we were doing a lot of fighting. I was, a younger man, so 41. So I was still fighting with the younger guys. And it's pretty full contact, hard, it's full contact. So I was pretty sore. And we had this hot tub at the top on the rooftop deck of our house, had a hot tub up there. And I'd go and I'd soak in that after Tuesday night fight night.
So it was a Tuesday. Your setting was a Tuesday.
It was a Tuesday night. And the class started at 7, ended at 8:30. I'd usually get home by 9. So I was in this hot tub like around 9:10, 9:15, and this thing happened right around 9:20 was when this sighting happened. So and here's the other thing about sightings. Oftentimes you'll have the subject or the person who's meant to see it, and then you'll have other people who are turned away from it or don't care or somehow are switched off. My wife and I went up to the rooftop deck, and she handed me my glass of wine, and she goes, "Oh, I forgot mine," and she goes back downstairs. Right. Wow. So she didn't see it. It was just
she
me.
wasn't. So I was going to say, my next thing is, Steve, that show was for you. That was designed for you.
Right. It doesn't always happen that way, but oftentimes it does. Right. Doesn't. You were talking about how you hadn't thought about your sighting for 47 years or something, right? 40 something years.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people who have profound experiences like that. They'll even take pictures, right, of the event, of the sighting, and then they'll put the camera in the closet and forget about it for 20 years, come back to it, develop the film, see the photo, and then the memories fled back years later, right? Hackensack, or I had a girlfriend from New Jersey. This is when I was an engineer. Now I was just out of the military engineer here at Tier W. Started dating the gal. She was from Hackensack, and she started telling me all these crazy stories about abduction, like her abduction.
Wow.
And I thought she was loony, but she was telling, at that time I had nowhere to put those stories. She told me this one story, how she was, she kind of lived in a rural part of New Jersey there.
Oh yeah. It's the Garden State. There's a lot of there's forests and things in New Jersey.
She told me 2 stories. I'll tell you the first one. She's riding her bike as a young girl, and she sees this very, very large craft coming down out of the sky at a very acute angle. And it's just falling out of the sky, and it goes behind a barn, and she's expecting the explosion and to be killed. She's expecting it's that big and it's that close, and it goes behind the barn and disappears, and it's gone. It's nothing happens. Another time, she's telling me this other story, which was even more telling. She's at her girlfriend's house. They're on the porch of her family house after dinner, and everybody is there, kind of looking out at the night sky. This is all in New Jersey, and a blue orb comes down out of the sky and comes up to her, and she wants to scream, but she can't. And she looks around at everybody else, and everybody else is just switched off. They're all standing there, but nobody's reacting at all. They're not talking. They're just sort of like in a zombie land. And she has this experience where she can't scream, and then it takes off. So, and then she started telling me about abduction stuff. Well, of course, what did I do? This girl's crazy, and I stopped dating her.
This is before your encounter. Yeah,
it was.
You weren't open-minded at that point.
Right, I had nothing to do. I couldn't process that information. I just thought, this girl's loony, and I, she's good looking, but I gotta, I gotta bust a move.
I've done every insane girl in Hollywood. I've met all of them. So listen, Thomas Jane has a similar story. Thomas Jane was 8 years old. I interviewed him last year on my podcast, and he said he was 8 years old in Montana with his dad and his grandfather, and they woke up at 4 a.m. one morning to go fishing. They love to go fishing in Montana. So the 3 of them, it's dark. They get in the Jeep or the truck, and his grandfather's driving. His father's in the front seat. He's 8 years old in the back seat, and there's this open sunroof, moonroof, open. So they're driving through Montana, dark, no lights of any kind. And they're driving along. And Thomas Jane looks up at the sky, and an orange craft, an orange craft, is following the car, and it's directly above where he sees through the open roof. So Thomas Jane says, "Granddad, Dad, look, look, Dad, look, you
Yeah.
guys, there's a UFO." And
Yeah.
he said his grandfather and his father, they never looked in the back seat. They were completely turned off. They just kept driving. They didn't say a word. They were turned off completely.
Yeah.
And he was wondering about that. And then the craft just followed to Thomas for a while, and Thomas is like, "Okay, what's happening?" Then the craft left, and then the father turns around and said, "Thomas, did you say something?" And they had been, like you said, that
Yeah.
crazy girl. They had been turned off for
Switched off. Yeah. Yeah.
switched off. That's a real
And if
thing.
you, yeah, and that's very common. If you look and you read into the lore, it's very common for people who switched off like that. The spouse that won't wake up, like no matter how
Oh,
hard you hit them, they're
yeah,
not
yeah.
waking up. Things like that. Just it's very common. Yeah.
So part of me recently, I keep thinking about my dad having no reaction to that pyramid of Egypt hovering over his car. So either there's three now I have three theories. One, he totally knew what it was and it bored him, which is my favorite theory. Another is that perhaps he was switched off.
Could have been.
And the third, Steve, is you know how I just heard this recently in one of in Travis Walton's book. Some scientists get downloads of information from craft. My dad was a genius physicist. He was a genius, literally.
Yeah.
Maybe he was getting because my dad designed and invented drones, right? In fact, I have proof. In 1975, my father tested the first drone that ever fired on a tank with a laser beam and destroyed the tank. I have proof of that.
What year was this?
In writing, in 1975.
75. High. So we had lasers powerful enough to shoot on a tank in 1975
from drones.
From a drone.
And my dad oversaw that at White Sands. I have that written on a piece of paper.
I don't believe you, Dan. You're making all this up.
I have it on a piece of paper. But think about it, Steve. What if that craft was giving my father
Download.
Data? Like, what was his name? Win Peniston? The guy that Peniston?
Yep.
Who touched
Peniston. His first name wasn't Win, but anyway, Peniston. I know you're talking
something about. Peniston. John Peniston?
Yeah. Let's say that. But anyway, it was in
at Rendlesham.
Bentwaters. Yeah.
Bentwater. He touched it, and then he had all the ones and zeros.
The binary, yeah.
And he wrote the ones and zeros in a book, and he kept the book hidden for like 20 years.
Yeah.
So
Dan, we're
about out
I
of
think
time.
I got to run.
Okay.
Let's pick this up. What time you want to reconvene?
All right, maybe we could do part 2 sometime really real soon. Are you going to be a contact in the desert?
Yes, I'm planning on it.
Okay, as an attendee.
As an attendee, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
Thank you for doing this for me. I'll see you at Contact. We'll do a part 2 because
I'm so sorry to cut it off early. We had that problem with the technology and all.
I know you have to go. We had a little bit of a glitch. Thank you, brother.
Dan, thanks so much, man. I want to pick this conversation up. It was getting very interesting,
I know. We have a lot to
I
talk
had no
about.
idea you had all these experiences.
I know. Like when I used to go to your meetings, I'd be in the back of the room going, this is before the experiences came back to me, Steve.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
I knew
this is before.
Yeah, yeah. Your meeting was 07.
Right.
My download was 2017, 10 years later.
Holy smokes.
And once the download happened, then I remembered my whole life story.
No. Oh.
So I knew I needed to know about UFOs, but I didn't.
Everything's making sense.
I didn't know why.
Everything's making sense. I'm so sorry we have to cut it off.
All right, brother. Thanks a lot.
Man.
I'll
thank
see
you
all
buddy.
next week on my show. Thank you very much.
All right.